Okay, just one thing, seeing that Pesach is in just over a week. Just one thing
Really?
about the Bedikat Chametz. Bedikat Chametz takes place the night before this actual Chag. But this year it has to be done on Thursday night because the Chag is Motzei Shabbos. So when we do this Bedikat Chametz, some people take pieces of bread or chametz and they put it in different places in the home that they won't forget to search that particular room or area. Um, Not everyone does that. And what people used to do in the old days is to take a candle and walk around with a candle, but it's not advisable. Torch or your cell phone torch is perfectly uh, acceptable to search for the chametz, or actually even a handheld torch. That's advisable. I mean, you can cause a fire if you carry a candle and it drops. So rather use a torch or your cell phone torch to search for those pieces of chametz, then you collect them. Then you do the sorry, before you do the search, you do a nullification, use a brocha, then you set up, then you do the search. You do a brocha pre the search. Then once you've searched for everything and you found all the chametz, you nullify it with another declaration. Then you burn that chametz in the morning. Uh, must be done obviously Friday morning. It's a bit flexible. They say by 11 a.m. But because the Chag is uh, more than 24 hours after the burning, I think it might be a bit more flexible. So that's the story.
Okay.
And yeah, that's the
Is,
story with the search and nullification.
is Chag and Minhag the same thing?
A
No, Minhag is
minhag
a custom and
is
Chag is the
ah
actual festival.
festival,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Okay,
It sounds similar. That's a good question, yeah.
just two things. First thing is on what Kevin's saying. If there is a custom to hide 10 parcels to get you to explore your entire abode, just as a note to diary based on my stupidity, is that you don't want to sit there 3 hours looking because you forgot where the heck you put it or where somebody else put it on your behalf. Get another party to write down where they put each and every item. Otherwise, you end up getting in a frantic situation and having chametz where there's no chametz that should be. So, in other words, make a
Mm.
note of whoever is hiding it for you. You don't hide it yourself. It's like Mr. Bean sending himself a birthday card and goes, "Ooh," in surprise. He sent it to himself.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless there's something very wrong with you, you don't hide it and then find it 2 seconds later with an fawning of absolute surprise. So if a third party is doing it for you, then make sure they write down where they've hidden each and every item on the screen. Um, okay. So Lance had a good point because by logical deduction, if your half sister is forbidden to you for an incestuous relationship, and it results in kares, which is spiritual excision from the Jewish people, as well as malchus, lashes, then even more so, a full sister should be forbidden to you, and you should get kares and lashes. So Lanche is completely right from a logical standpoint, but that's an il fortiori argument. According to Kavachume, it needs a basis in scripture because we don't work on logic alone, especially for corporeal punishments like kares and those that have a manifestation of early death in this world, as well as lashes. So, Lance, the translation that I used yesterday, you might have felt there was a problem with it. The what I shared on my screen in Coral Draw was actually in the Gemara itself. Okay, it was in Makkos 5b2 and 5b3, 5b3 to be exactly. So, Lance, that's been going for a few thousand years. And Gavin and I train on Microsoft, and we say to clients often if they've got problems with the software, we ain't building Excel. We teach people how to use it. We don't build the race course. We teach people how to do driver's ed. It's the same thing with this. I never wrote the Gemara. But if it's here in the Daf, I don't think the Gemara had the wrong interpretation in Hebrew, by the way. I really, really don't. It's not my interpretation. The whole reason it was brought in Art Scroll in the fifth Daf in B3 is because the Gemara says that it's using an either or principle based on the language. So if you want to refer to the Schottenstein, I would suggest that that Stone edition is also a great Art Scroll series. And I'm going to also show you that if you want to find that, one of the things that you've got to bear in mind is I've got the Hebrew here. Now, I'm no expert in Hebrew, so I'm not going to even pretend to have a skill set I don't. So I'm going to share the English with you. But it's on page, I'll share the page with you. It's on page, Lance, 668 and 669 if you want to look at the Stone Edition Chumash. Now, I'm going to share the Mishnah with you. I'm just going to stop this particular screenshot. Just give me a second. Just hang on a second. I'm stopping to share. All right, Lance, give me 1 sec. I'm just sharing my screen with you. Because I think it is a reasonable question, is that Sepharia, Lance, can be questionable when you translate. But not if the Daf brought this up as an actual issue itself. So, all right, Lance, would you like to read the chapter 20, verse 17 of Vayikra Leviticus? Would you like to read it?
A man who shall take his sister, the daughter of his father or the daughter of his mother, and he shall see her nakedness, and she shall see his nakedness. It is disgrace, and they shall be cut off from the sight of the members of the people. We will have uncovered the nakedness of his sister. He shall bear his iniquity. That's exactly the
Perfect.
same as what we read yesterday.
Yes, correct. But I wanted you to know I never used the Sepharia because Lance is correct. We have picked up problems in Sepharia. That's why I either use the Schottenstein Art Scroll edition when they bring the pasuk there, or I use the Stone edition Chumash. So Lance is correct that there can be interpretive problems, but not if a whole daf of Gemara has it within that. It's obviously an issue that's been brought up that it's a scriptural source. Because it would say a man who takes his sister and sees her nakedness and she sells by the seashore. All right, it's a bit of a tongue twist. I get that. A man who takes his sister and he shall see her nakedness and she shall his nakedness is a euphemism for sex, intercourse. It's a disgrace, and they shall be cut off in the sight of the members of their people. He will have uncovered the nakedness of his sister and bear his iniquity. So the very phrase, the daughter of his father or the daughter of his mother, is superfluous. All it has to say, Lance, is, and a man who takes his sister. That's all it has to say. The very fact that it says the daughter of his father, or, doesn't say and the daughter of his mother, or the daughter of his mother, is implying a half sibling on either the father or mother's side. Do you see that? Mufurish, it's there. So, what the Gemara wants to know now is if this is the implication for a half sibling, how do we know? Why can't you apply the Kol V'chomer based on logic for a full sibling? It would have to say it in the source material. And it's at that point that the Gemara is going to go through an explanation, and then I'm going to share what it has to say. Are you satisfied so far, Lance?
Yeah.
Okay. So it says, for we learnt in a brisa upon that following verse, if a man shall take his sister, the daughter of his father, or, as the Gemara emphasizes, the daughter of his mother. So it emphasizes the penalty of kares and malchus. From this, I know only that kares penalty for incest with the sister who is the daughter of his father, but not the daughter of his mother. And the Gemara goes further. And for the sister who is the daughter of his mother, but not the daughter of his father. In other words, for a half sister, the Gemara is saying, from where in Scripture do we know that kares punishment applies to incest with a full sister, who is both the daughter of his father and the daughter of his mother? Okay, so the Torah basically goes through the following. It's saying that the brother-sister kingship for through one parent is not viewed as the same level of closeness as a full sister that has blood ties through both parents. And therefore, you can't necessarily say that a more stringent penalty isn't A, required, and B, that the same penalty would suffice for a atonement for a kapora. Rather, it's viewed as a different relationship, and due to the closeness, a full sister would have to be explicitly stated because you cannot derive this by logical inference or biblical allusion. Okay, so the Bryson now makes its point. Is now, even if the Torah had not stated that this punishment for a full sister, I might have deduced it by logic. So, in other words, if the Torah decreed, as the Gemara says in 5b4, if the Torah decreed punishment for a sister who's the daughter of his father but not the daughter of his mother, and for a sister who's the daughter of his mother but not the daughter of his father, as stated explicitly in that verse of an either-or concept, then the sister who is both the daughter of his father and the daughter of his mother is not surely, it's subject to the Kares punishment for incest if it's a full sister. If so, why is this separate biblical sourcing necessary to establish the Karet principle for a full sister? And from this, the Gemara says you can learn She'ein unshim min hadin, that punishment cannot be assigned on the basis of logical inference. Okay, so what the Gemara is basically saying that there's a number of rationales given by commentators. The obvious explanation, according to the Gemara Insights, is that fallible human reasoning cannot be trusted to impose capital or even corporeal punishment, no matter how logical the argument may seem. And this is also brought in Avodah Zorah, chapter 6, verse 4. And, you know, you have the smach in a different context that states a punishment imposed for one transgression is not necessarily appropriate for a more grievous sin, because an important aspect of any punishment is atonement, and therefore it might be this closer relationship with a full sister, a far more heinous sin. So how do we know, where does the smach get this for that appropriation of grievous sins, and the kol v'chomer can't be established that from that necessarily? We learned this, Gavin, in Sanhedrin. It was before you joined. We were learning it in Mahasha, in Sanhedrin 43b, okay, which states a more grievous sin may require greater punishment to achieve its atonement. So utilizing this concept in the Mahasha is one of the commentators, and it's so funny, we learned it at Mahasha. In a commentary to Sanhedrin 64b, it argues that for this reason, the Torah does not allow punishment to be assigned on the basis of logical inferences. The basic logic of a kol v'chomer is that a stringency, this is very important, that is applied to a generally less stringent matter should surely be applied to a more stringent one. But this very logic is not relevant to punishments of such a spiritual nature, especially in capital or corporeal cases. So the Gemara wants to extend this principle to the prohibition. And it says, how do we basically implement this case of kares to the sin of incest with a full sister? So, in
Just got
other
a
words,
question.
yeah, Brendan?
Sorry, I just want to make sure I understand fully what kares is. Is it because is that you've been cut off from Israel, and then you got to go move out of Israel and stay in another country?
Okay. So Brendan brings up a good point. It's punishment in the next world. It's not this. It's not like you living in the desert in Bamidbar, and you with the camp and you've spoken Lashon Hara, and then you get saras, which is a form of leprosy, spiritual leprosy, and then you're kicked out of the camp for X amount of days until your skin clears. This is a spiritual excision from the Jewish people. You're no longer associated with the Jewish people. You know, you've got sins like if somebody, for example, undoes their Brit Milah. You had a lot of Hellenistic Jews that didn't want to be associated with being Jewish. And there are spiritual ramifications for being a Chilul Hashem and things like this. And sometimes what can only atone for it, not in full, but maybe in part, is if somebody gives up their life in this world as a punishment, like a death penalty, or Makkos lashes does perform some form of atonement, but to what degree, I have no idea. It's beyond my pay grade. But certainly incest with the sister is not a great idea. Because why does Hashem, if you know with this issue with you had you had this thing with Pinchas and you had Bilam, is that when Bilam's curses turned to blessings, he realized he spoke to the king of Moab, and he said, "You know what Hashem hates? He hates spiritual sins of sexual immorality, and if we get the Jews to commit sexual immorality with the daughters of Moab, Hashem's going to punish them." So incest with the sister is not recommended. Okay. So, and I'm speaking generally to the group. This is not personal. And in fact, it's probably, I wonder if it's one of the 7 Noahide laws. As far as I know, it absolutely is. It's not just for the Jewish people. And also please note, Brendan, that kares comes with premature death in this world. And in fact, the Ramban Nachmanides has in a commentary in page 668 in English with regards to this particular verse, is that when it says that that the Jewish people it'll be a disgrace amongst the people, it means the people will see that there's such a bizarre premature death that happens to this couple that they'll clearly see it's the divine hand of God. So you must look at that commentary. But let's just get back to the point.
Can I ask you a question that's relevant?
Yeah.
If incest takes place and there's no warning, what happens then?
So
Nothing.
That's an excellent question. Certainly, there's no punishment in this world for any sort of sexual immorality. We are going to learn in Makkos that one has to see the equivalent, according to certain opinions, of almost like if you look at eyelashes, that the applicator has to fit into the bottle. And it's very rare that you'd have 2 witnesses that are standing over the couple while they're copulating to where they can see the entry point. And then, therefore, would that not constitute a warning if you have a first witness that sees what looks like conjugal relations of adultery, and the other one, do you have to see almost the brush going to the applicator? These are things that are discussed in terms of witnesses, but bearing in mind the bottom line of it is that one is hoping there's punishment in this world because it does provide atonement in the next world. If there's none and there's a punishment of kares, they will get premature death in this world and their souls will be cut off from the Jewish people in the next world. Okay.
So just to be clear, that's even without witnesses.
Absolutely. The only thing that witnesses help to provide, correct. The only thing that witnesses help to provide, Gavin, is the ability to prosecute in an earthly court.
Yeah, but now what about them being if what about if they're not caught at all, it's fine. But let's say it's not, but there's suspicion. No, can't they put them into those rooms and then give them barley and let them explode? You remember when you're not culpable in this world because they weren't given a warning, but you know that incest has taken place. Let's say there's one witness.
Interesting. So Gavin's asking a great question. Can we do what we do in other cases where there is a failure for sufficient procedure followed, meaning that where we give a death penalty, but there was insufficient warning, or the warning wasn't with the specific death penalty according to certain opinions, but it was a general death penalty, or there weren't 2 witnesses giving the warning, or it's grammar indirect, or there's any technicality, then the Sanhedrin doesn't kill the person. They basically, as Lance correctly said, were given the barley treatment that we went through. Is that given in this case? Well, Gavin, I don't think so, because it seems, I've always thought that sexual immorality, for sure, adultery gets the death penalty. But it seems from what I'm reading here, and I don't know that much about adultery, is that it seems to only have a connection with kares and Makkos lashes. So I don't think it would extend to the barley treatment. Would it extend to the barley treatment if it were a sexual crime that manifested in a death penalty? Should proper protocol be received in this world? If that was breached, would they be given the barley treatment? I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe it would make sense if it was, but I'm not sure. I'm not totally sure.
That's fine. I'll just ask you because often you might not raise it, but you read it in the you covered it in the notes or something. So I was just checking. No, if you haven't covered it, it's fine. Then we will eventually at some point we'll know. But it's not crucial. I just
No,
thought
but
it'd
it's
be
actually
interesting.
something interesting that I'd like to Plineta Ostrov Simka to find out. But I remember when I brought it up in his home, when we were there that one day, he basically said we're not learning Sanhedrin here, but it does relate to Sanhedrin very much. It very much is on point. So the Gemara wants to go back to this point and say, look, how do we know that there's a basic prohibition of incest with one's full sister? And does it get the Kol V'chomer application? And if so, where is the sourcing? In other words, in the Torah system, in order for a sin to be subject to a court-imposed corporeal punishment, the Torah, as Gavin said, must not only clearly establish the punishment for that activity, but it must also clearly and separately state the prohibition of that activity in the Chumash. So the Braisa is now teaching that just as the punishment itself cannot be deduced from a logical inference, such as a kol v'chomer, so to the scriptural prohibition necessary to qualify the matter for punishment also can't be drawn from a logical inference, such as a kol v'chomer. Okay, so where do we get it from, guys? Let's just get to the bottom line. Is we get it from a pasuk in Leviticus chapter 18, verse 11. We were previously on Leviticus chapter 20, verse 17. We're now on chapter 18, verse 11. And that's another prohibition regarding incest with the sister. So what does it say? The nakedness of your sister, the daughter of your father, or the daughter of your mother, born in the house or born outside the house. Why does it mention that? Because sometimes with a half sister, the whole reason you're attracted to her is she didn't tick you off growing up with her. A lot of the reason why people don't commit incest is because they're not mad about their sibling because they grew up with them. Whatever attraction you have, it's like a long marriage. It's fatigued. It's not there anymore, believe me. So therefore, it says born out of your house. That's one of the factors. Guys, are you still with me on Zoom?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Am I sharing my screen with you or not? I don't know what bloody day it is.
Yes, you are. We can see you.
Okay. I don't know why I can't see you guys. I think I might have run out of Pasukim. Let me just close this window. All right. So the bottom line, and I've got the cat on my screen. It's beautiful. Is that it mentions out of the house for two reasons. One is most likely if you do have incest, it's more common because you don't think it's prohibited if you never grew up with somebody. And you'd say, well, isn't it obvious? Not everything is obvious. You go to Mississippi and you go to some of the Amish countries, counties or whatever, nothing is obvious. Believe me. That's number one. You go to certain parts of Boxburg, I'm sure it's not obvious either. Just one other issue is that sometimes one's not aware that one's half sibling is prohibited or one's step sibling is prohibited. I knew of a very strange case years ago when I went to Camp Netzem Maginim that one of the women actually mentioned to me when we were growing up as teenagers that she slept with the stepbrother. I said half brother, full brother. I know of another case that Gavin and I know of this particular woman that actually had an affair with both the father and the son at different times. And this is a Jewish woman. She shares the same English birthday as I do. Peculiar, trust me. The other reason is that sometimes you don't know the person is your sibling, especially if they haven't grown up in your house. So that's why it's very specific in the pasuk. Let me just continue reading, and then you'll see where this comes. But the pasuk continues, you shall not uncover their nakedness, okay? And what it does mention in this particular pasuk is the final words of this is the nakedness of your daughter of your father's wife, born to your father, she is your sister. You shall not uncover her nakedness. So this very repetition of the word she is your sister is superfluous. Why? Because if it's the nakedness of the daughter of your father's wife, okay, born of your father, okay, what does that imply, guys? She is your sister, both half sister and full sister. So that answers Lance's question. So Lance, you're completely correct, but we needed another source to prove it. And that's the proof in Leviticus chapter 18.
Let me just repeat that. Sorry, I actually didn't hear your audio correctly there. Just repeat that proof again.
Okay. So our first evidence where it failed to mention it was Vayikra chapter 20, verse 17. It said either or. In Leviticus, Vayikra chapter 18, verse 11, it said the nakedness of your daughter of your father's wife. Okay, not your father's wife, born of your father. Now, it's she is your sister. Now, if it's implying half sister, the daughter of your father's wife, born of your father, that's enough to state half sister. The minute it mentions this extra wording, she is your sister. Okay, it's got achotcha hu. It basically includes both a half sister and a full sister, and therefore it serves as a prohibition for the latter. It's because there's no superfluous or unnecessary words in the Torah. You get that as a
So
proof.
then why didn't they just combine it and say sister or half sister in one as opposed to two like us, and this is different punishment?
So that's a good point. Let me just finish and then I'll answer Gavin's question. So the Bryson now makes its point. Now, even if the Torah had not stated the prohibition of incest with a full sister, I could have deduced by logical inference that if it had been prohibited to engage in incestuous relationships with the daughter of his mother, who is not the daughter of his father, or with the daughter of his father, who is not the daughter of his mother, as stated explicitly in that verse of Leviticus chapter 20, verse 17, then the sister who is both the daughter of his father and the daughter of the mother, surely that is prohibited with a kal vachomer of even more so a full sister should get the full punishment. And if so, the Bryce is saying, why is this separate prohibition necessary to establish the incest prohibition for a full sister? It's logical. And the Torah says you learn that we cannot establish a scriptural prohibition on the basis of a logical inference. And the two reasons we mentioned is sometimes that closer relationship might be deemed a more grievous sin, and therefore the punishment could be more stringent, or might not atone fully, but it always needs a scriptural source. Now, Gavin, you might say, why didn't it mention this in one pasuk? Okay. One of the answers is that it's now talking about a case of location. In other words, it starts off by saying that never grew up with you. Do you get what I'm saying? That was that you grew up with in a household and you didn't grow up with a household. So each pasuk is giving us different elements and different points of knowledge. Does that make sense? We just learning one aspect.
They still could have merged them into one pasuk. They just add the location as well, but as one. I'm just saying it seems like a slight bit of redundancy when we're trying to, the Torah doesn't waste words.
So it's not redundancy for one particular reason, is that you have different hermeneutical principles at play. Meaning is that you need different pasukim to relate different halachas. Okay, this is brought down from Moshe at Har Sinai. So, in other words, if only from a tradition, the rabbis can't make up their own Gezerah Shabbos or Hekeshes. So, which means we need more pasukim to derive 613 mitzvot. And once it's been used, you can't use it exhaustively for multiple things. You need certain things to be unique for certain halachas. That's one of the things. You've got what you call an open Gezerah Shava and a closed Gezerah Shava. And they've got different principles at work. One day when we finish the Gemara, we'll go through all these principles. And maybe ask Rabbi Cohen to explain it to us. But they definitely do not teach the same thing. I mean, we learned alone in this particular one two things. It has to do with whether it grew up in your location or didn't. It's prohibited either way. You couldn't have put that in the first area because the first area was talking about seeing the signs of a premature death, and that the people would even notice that by the oddity of it. If you read the Ramban, so all the commentaries bring different interpretations from those two pasukim, and when you merge them, you do what the non-Jewish nations do. You take it literally, and you miss all the content. Like, for example, the word Adam means dam means blood. Adam means from Adamah, earth. It's flesh and blood created from the dust of the earth. So there's so much more in Hebrew, and from each and every word that can be deduced than just saying your sister or half sister thereof is prohibited to you. Do you get what I'm saying? All the halachas are derived from these principles, and they have to be assigned to different pasukim. Otherwise, there's a certain amount of overlap and redundancy. No word is wasted.
And also, I was thinking maybe also if you would combine it, it would be just in one book. These are different books where it's coming from, isn't it?
Correct, and they apply at different times of the Jewish people.
Different times, correct.
And also at different behaviors. Exactly that. Exactly.
So if we had to go back, we're not doing that, but obviously we're just looking at that one source that you gave us. But if you read that whole thing, it's probably relevant for that section. So it needed to be added twice, but you may as well add in a different way, and because it's applicable, and then you can create the
correct. The 10 Commandments were given twice.
Link between the two.
So it's also context of what was happening at the time, and various other points of timelines and chronology, etc., as well as historical verification. Guys, I hope you have a good week ahead. Have a great Shabbos. And
thanks. Well done for that. Thanks for bringing it.
It's here tomorrow, Damon.
No, Lance is traveling. Have safe travels, Lance. Be well, man.
Yeah, travel safe and return safe.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers, guys. I hope it helped.
Good. Very much so.
Okay.